I will break the bow of Elam, the chief of their might. 5 words, written 2,600 years ago, by a man sitting in a city about to be destroyed. And 2 weeks ago, the world watched as the skies over Iran erupted in fire. A military confrontation that has shaken the entire Middle East. The region's most powerful military force, crippled. Its supreme leader, gone. Its people, scattered across borders they never planned to cross. And a narrow waterway that carries 1/5 of the world's oil supply, choked shut for the first time in modern history. The entire global economy is holding its breath. Now, I'm not here to tell you this was predicted. I'm here to show you something most people have never seen. An ancient scroll written by a prophet named Jeremiah that describes a specific land, a specific weapon, and a specific outcome. And when you lay that scroll next to what just happened, the parallels will stop you cold. By the end of this video, you'll understand why millions of people are searching for this passage right now and what it might mean for all of us. Let's start where it all begins. The book of Jeremiah, chapter 49, starting at verse 34. Now, before I read this, I need you to understand who's writing. Jeremiah is not some detached philosopher. He's living in Jerusalem around 597 BC, and his world is falling apart. The Babylonian Empire is at the gates. His own king, Zedekiah, has just been placed on the throne as a puppet ruler. Judah is months away from total destruction, and in the middle of all that chaos, Jeremiah sits down and writes a prophecy, not about his own nation, but about the nations around him: Egypt, Moab, Edom, Damascus. And then, at the very end of the list, Elam. Now, I want to be clear. We're exploring this as students of history and scripture. This isn't about predicting the future. This is about understanding the past. And what we find is remarkable. Here's what Jeremiah wrote. Listen carefully. The word of the Lord that came to Jeremiah the prophet against Elam in the beginning of the reign of Zedekiah, king of Judah, saying, Thus saith the Lord of hosts, Behold, I will break the bow of Elam, the chief of their might. Stop right there. The bow of Elam? In the ancient world, the Elamites were legendary archers. Their bow wasn't just a weapon, it was their identity. The Hebrew word here for bow is kesheth, and it doesn't just mean a weapon. It refers to the primary instrument of war, the thing a nation relies on most. When you said Elam, people thought of the bow the way we think of America's aircraft carriers or Russia's nuclear arsenal. It was, as the text says, the chief of their might, the backbone of Elam's power. Now look at what it says next. Verse 36, And upon Elam will I bring the 4 winds from the 4 quarters of heaven, and will scatter them toward all those winds. And there shall be no nation whither the outcasts of Elam shall not come. Notice how specific that is. Not scattered to one place, to every direction. Verse 37 speaks of enemies pursuing them. And I will set my throne in Elam, and will destroy from thence the king and the princes. Not just the army, the leadership, the king, the princes. And then, verse 39, the final line, and perhaps the most important one. But it shall come to pass in the latter days, that I will bring again the captivity of Elam, saith the Lord. Judgment, and then restoration. That phrase, in the latter days, has been debated by scholars for centuries. Some read it as a near-future promise fulfilled when Cyrus absorbed Elam into the Persian Empire. Others see it pointing much further ahead. 3 elements: a broken weapon, a scattered people, a destroyed throne. Remember those 3 things, because to understand why they matter today, we need to go back to meet the civilization Jeremiah was writing about. And what we find in the sands of ancient Iran will change how you read the Bible. Imagine standing at the gates of an ancient city, not Rome, not Athens, older than both, the city of Susa, capital of the civilization known as Elam. Elam was one of the earliest civilizations on Earth. While Sumer was rising in Mesopotamia, Elam was building its own world in what is now the southwestern corner of Iran, centered in a region we call Khuzestan. The city of Susa was its crown jewel, and it wasn't some backwater outpost. Susa was a center of trade, diplomacy, and war for over 3,000 years. Archaeologists have uncovered layers of civilization there going back to 4000 BC, making it one of the oldest continuously inhabited cities in human history. And Elam left behind something extraordinary. About 30 kilometers southeast of Susa, the Elamites built a massive stepped temple, a ziggurat that still stands today as a UNESCO World Heritage Site. It was constructed around 1250 BC by the king Untash-na-Pirisha, and it tells us something important. This was not a primitive society. This was a civilization that built monuments to rival Babylon. In fact, around 1160 BC, an Elamite king named Shutruk-Nahunta did something astonishing. He invaded Babylon and brought home its greatest treasures, including the famous Code of Hammurabi. That stone slab, one of the oldest legal codes in history, was found by archaeologists in Susa because the Elamites had taken it as a war trophy. It's now in the Louvre in Paris. Think about that. One of the most important artifacts in human history ended up in Susa because Elam was that powerful. Here's a detail most people completely miss. The prophet Daniel, yes, that Daniel, the one in the lion's den, received one of his most famous visions while standing in Susa. Daniel chapter 8, verse 2. I saw in a vision, and I was at Shushan the palace, which is in the province of Elam. Daniel saw the future of empires from the very soil Jeremiah was writing about. But what made Elam truly feared was its military, specifically, its archers. The Elamite bow was not an ordinary weapon. Ancient Assyrian reliefs, the kind you can still see in the British Museum, depict Elamite archers as elite warriors. Isaiah 22:6 mentions Elam specifically in the context of military power. They carried the weapon of choice for the ancient world's most feared fighting force. So when Jeremiah writes, I will break the bow of Elam, the chief of their might, he's not speaking in vague metaphors. He's identifying the specific military asset that made Elam powerful. The bow was to Elam what the missile is to a modern military. Now let's zoom out. Elam didn't exist in isolation. It was surrounded by some of the most powerful civilizations in history. To the west, Babylon. To the north, Assyria and Media. To the east, the rising power of Persia. And Elam sat right in the middle of all of it, controlling trade routes, waterways, and mountain passes that connected empires. The ancient historian Herodotus wrote about this region. So did the Babylonian Chronicles. Even the book of Genesis mentions Elam. In chapter 14, a king of Elam named Chedorlaomer leads a military coalition across the region. That's how far back this name goes. But here's where the story takes a dramatic turn. Around 640 BC, just decades before Jeremiah wrote his prophecy, the Assyrian king Ashurbanipal invaded Elam, sacked Susa, and deported its people. The destruction was devastating. Ashurbanipal didn't just conquer Susa, he boasted about it. In his own royal inscriptions, now housed in the British Museum, he wrote that he destroyed Susa's temples, broke open the tombs of Elamite kings, and carried their bones back to Assyria as trophies. He wanted Elam erased from memory. The once proud civilization was shattered. Its language, which linguists still classify as a language isolate, unrelated to any other known language on Earth, began to fade. Its people were scattered. And then, within a generation, something extraordinary happened. The Persians, led by Cyrus the Great, absorbed Elam entirely. Susa became a Persian capital. The land of Elam became the heart of a new empire. And here's what's fascinating. When Jeremiah sat down to write about Elam around 597 BC, the old Elamite kingdom was already gone. But the land itself, that specific geographic region in southwestern Iran, was about to become more important than ever. Susa would go on to be the setting for the Book of Esther, where Queen Esther saved the Jewish people from genocide. It would be the winter palace of Darius the Great. The Code of Hammurabi, that trophy the Elamites stole from Babylon, was found buried in its ruins by French archaeologists in 1901. So the ancient world knew exactly what Elam was. It was the crossroads of everything. The land that every empire wanted to control because whoever held it controlled the flow of trade, armies, and power between East and West. And 26 centuries later, that same piece of land, southwestern Iran, still sits at the crossroads of the world. It borders Iraq, it holds some of Iran's largest oil fields, and it overlooks the body of water that carries 20% of the world's oil supply. Now I need you to really focus here, because what comes next is the part that connects the ancient to the modern. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. Now let's overlay these two timelines. Jeremiah wrote 3 specific things about Elam, and I want to walk you through each one slowly, because the parallels are not vague. They're precise. The first parallel: I will break the bow of Elam, the chief of their might. In the ancient world, the bow was Elam's defining weapon, its primary military asset. Today, Iran's defining military asset is its missile and drone arsenal, its modern bow. Before this conflict began, analysts estimated Iran possessed around 3,000 ballistic missiles and one of the most extensive drone programs on Earth. For decades, that arsenal has been what strategists call Iran's asymmetric advantage. It was the chief of their might, the one capability that made every nation in the region and beyond think twice. And in the opening days of the current conflict, according to multiple defense analysts, that arsenal has been reduced by an estimated 90%. Drone capability, 95% gone. Thousands of military targets struck across 26 provinces. More than 60 naval vessels sunk. The backbone of Iran's military power, broken, not degraded, not weakened, broken. And here's the geographic layer that most commentators miss. The ancient land of Elam, Khuzestan, southwestern Iran, sits directly above the Strait of Hormuz, the narrow waterway through which 1/5 of the world's oil supply passes every day. As of this recording, that strait is effectively closed to most commercial traffic. Major carriers have suspended all transits. Oil prices have surged past $200 a barrel. The ancient crossroads of Elam is shaking the global economy right now. The second parallel: I will destroy from thence the king and the princes. Not the people, not the land. The text is specific: the king and the princes. In the opening hours of this conflict, the supreme leader of Iran was confirmed killed in an airstrike, along with members of his own family. Reports indicate that dozens of senior military and political officials were killed or captured. The defense minister, the chief of staff, senior intelligence officials. And when a new leader was appointed to replace him, the supreme leader's first successor, reports suggest he too was wounded. What's striking is the precision of the ancient language. It doesn't say, destroy the nation. It says, destroy the king and the princes, the leadership structure. And the third parallel, the one that stopped me in my tracks: I will scatter them toward all those winds, and there shall be no nation whither the outcasts of Elam shall not come. Since the Islamic Revolution of 1979, more than 1 million Iranians have left their homeland. Today, the Iranian diaspora spans virtually every country on Earth. Los Angeles alone is home to an estimated 500,000 Iranians. They call it Tehrangeles. London, Toronto, Sydney, Dubai, Stockholm, Berlin, from South America to Southeast Asia. There is almost no nation where you won't find an Iranian community. And right now, as we speak, hundreds of thousands more are being displaced by this very conflict. Just days ago, Iranians who fled decades ago gathered in front of the White House, calling for the fall of the regime, wearing hats that read, "Make Iran great again." The ancient prophecy spoke of scattering to the four winds. The modern reality shows a diaspora that touches every corner of the earth. 3 elements, 3 parallels, a broken weapon, a destroyed leadership, a scattered people, written 2,600 years before any of it happened. Now, I need to be honest with you. Many respected scholars believe that Jeremiah 49:34-38 was already fulfilled historically when Babylon and later Persia conquered Elam. That's a legitimate reading. Others believe the prophecy has a dual fulfillment, one ancient, one yet to come. And some argue that verse 39, with its phrase, "in the latter days," is a promise still unfolding. I'm not here to tell you which interpretation is correct. I'm here to show you the pattern, and the pattern is remarkable. But the real question isn't whether this was predicted. The real question is what it means for you. You know, when I first sat down with this passage, I expected to find a story about judgment, about nations falling and empires crumbling, and that's there. It's undeniable. But the more I studied it, the more I realized that Jeremiah 49 isn't just about breaking. It's about something deeper. It's about the question every human being asks when the world shakes beneath their feet. Is anyone in control? Think about it. A man living in a crumbling city 2,600 years ago writes about a specific land hundreds of miles away, its weapon, its leaders, its people. Describes an outcome that scholars are still debating today. Whether you believe this is divine prophecy or the most remarkable coincidence in recorded history, the question remains the same. How do you explain a pattern this precise across this much time? And here's what I keep coming back to. Verse 39, the last line. After all the judgment, after the broken bow and the scattered people and the destroyed throne, Jeremiah writes, "But it shall come to pass in the latter days, that I will bring again the captivity of Elam, saith the Lord." Restoration. After the breaking, rebuilding. After the scattering, gathering. And that's not just a message for an ancient nation. That's a message for anyone watching this who feels like their own world is falling apart. Because the pattern in Scripture is never just destruction. It's destruction followed by restoration, breaking followed by rebuilding. On the day of Pentecost, recorded in Acts chapter 2, verse 9, the very first group of people mentioned hearing the gospel in their own language. And I need you to hear this. Parthians, Medes, and Elamites. Elamites, the descendants of the very people Jeremiah wrote about. The scrolls said they would be scattered, and then the scrolls said they would be restored. And the New Testament shows us how that restoration began. And here's something remarkable that's happening right now. Multiple sources have reported that despite decades of state-enforced atheism, the underground Christian church in Iran has been growing at one of the fastest rates in the world. Bibles are being downloaded in enormous numbers. House churches are multiplying. The same land where Jeremiah saw judgment is experiencing what many believe is a spiritual awakening. Whether or not you see that as the fulfillment of verse 39, you can't deny the pattern. Scattering, and then, from the scattered seeds, something new grows. So let me bring this home. We started this video with 5 words. I will break the bow of Elam. And we've traveled 2,600 years, from the crumbling walls of Jerusalem to the ancient gates of Susa, from the legendary archers of Elam to the missile arsenals of modern Iran. From an empire that once raided Babylon to a nation whose fate is shaking the entire world. And here's what I want you to take with you tonight. The world feels chaotic right now. The news is overwhelming. The images coming out of the Middle East are heartbreaking. Families displaced, children caught in crossfire, oil prices climbing, and it's natural to feel anxious. It's natural to wonder if anyone is steering this ship, if there's a plan behind the pain. But what Jeremiah 49 suggests, and what scholars across centuries have wrestled with, is that there may be a pattern woven into the fabric of history. Not a pattern that excuses suffering or celebrates destruction, but a pattern that says, this was seen, this was known, and at the end of the breaking, there is a promise of restoration. That promise isn't just for ancient Elam. If you're going through your own season of breaking right now, maybe you've lost something. Maybe your life feels like it's falling apart. Verse 39 is for you too. After the scattering, there is a gathering. After the exile, there is a homecoming. The story doesn't end with the breaking. Verse 39 doesn't end with fire. It ends with restoration. And if you're someone who holds Scripture close to your heart, that's not just history. It means the author of this story is still writing. And he writes restoration into every chapter, even the ones that look like endings. So whether you're watching this at 2 in the morning because you can't sleep, or you're driving to work wondering what's going to happen next, or you're sitting in a living room thousands of miles from Iran but feeling this in your bones, I want you to know you're not watching alone, and the story isn't over. If this video opened your eyes to something you hadn't seen before, I'd be honored if you'd subscribe to this channel and hit that notification bell. We go deep here. We don't do clickbait, and we don't do fear. Every single week, we open the scroll, we study the history, and we look for the patterns that connect the ancient world to the one you're living in right now. That's what Scrolls of Fire is about. Tell me in the comments, which of the 3 parallels surprised you the most? The broken bow, the king and princes, or the scattering to the 4 winds? I read every single comment, and I want to hear what you think. And if you know someone who needs to see this, share it. This is the kind of content that changes conversations. And next time on Scrolls of Fire, we're going to the water, a narrow strait that carries 20% of the world's oil, a choke point that's been fought over for millennia, and an ancient passage in the book of Daniel that describes a vision so specific, it reads like a military briefing. Daniel stood in Susa, the very capital of Elam we explored today, and saw a ram with 2 horns pushing westward, northward, and southward. Many scholars believe that Ram represents the empire that controlled this very strait, and the geography of his vision maps directly onto the most critical waterway on Earth. The map has something to say, and you're going to want to hear it. Until then, keep reading, keep asking questions, and never stop looking for the fire.